Welcome to Read Poems Every Day. Today we're going to keep taking some notes, getting to know Camonghne Felix's 2023 poem, Dearly Departed. Again, I dreamt about a ship. This afternoon, actually, no, it's still this morning. Late this morning, as I was thinking about this poem and preparing mentally for the recording of this video, I think I was realizing I don't know, sometimes in the excitement of realizing things and working things through in real time, you sometimes make some mistakes, and it's possible in my previous video, in my excitement at the role of the title in setting the scene for the poem, I mistakenly thought that the title and line one sort of were syntactically continuous with each other, when really, Dearly Departed, again, I dreamt about a ship. There's either a sense of a period or a semicolon there because the first one, two, three, four, five lines, or at least that first word of the fifth line, that is one sentence. When a mouth aboard said ship referring back to the title, called out to me. I was a berry. So that I was is the primary subject and predicate of that sentence. Anyway, but we're not talking about we're not bean counting today. We're going to listen for sound and sense today. My sense is that there's some strong alliteration in this poem. We have it there in the title, Dearly Departed, Dreamt. It's already there. Uh, and you have the sour sun in line 3. What else? Hmm. You have sorry, that was a very long pause. Its orientation in line 10. You have the T sounds there. Its orientation unmapped. And although there's not a T sound there, the pop of the P also seems in a kind to sort of continue a pattern and link its orientation to I let it, right? Let's keep unmapped. I let it. Lines 11, 10, 10, and 11. Is that lines? Yeah. Okay. I let it holler too long untended, and after too long in ignorance. I should maybe add just a separate, just kind of general repetition here. I'm still working out. I think I have such a clear sense of what bean counting is supposed to look like in a schematic for how to do it that when I start to listen to the poem and track and take notes on sound and sense, it's kind of like all bets are off, and I just kind of start tracking whatever I guess feel like tracking at the moment. Um, if the repetition of the and sign there, is that an ampersand? I think so. In line, is that I think that's line 5 and line 6. Let's zoom out a bit just to make sure. Yeah, line 5 and 6. And close together. So that's just repetition. I'm not marking the use of the ampersand instead of the word and, just the close proximity of it together there. And then you have the heard in line 7. I heard two crows, Caesura heard both. Which is interesting. Why the why the repetition of heard both to emphasize or qualify? I heard two crows. Hmm. I don't know. You have and then the lines that made me think I should also be tracking repetition. Too long, too long. in line 11 and 12. Back to beat me, a bullet of tenacity. So you have the B's, the T of the two, then leading into the end of bullet, and then tenacity there. So that is lines 11, that's 12 to 13. Lots of T's that kind of are threaded through here. The T of the two, bullet, tenacity, took too long, two, it's. Um, so a whole load of T's. T's. In this part, early in these early lines. Hmm. And then you have stayed, stayed. That's line 15, 16. Is that what, am I right about that? 5, 10, 15, 20. So yeah, that's line 17. Stayed, stayed by a new forgetfulness. Stayed. Stayed by, stayed by. Lines 17 and 18. Some more, I mean, I'm skipping over probably a bunch of examples of alliteration here, but I'm seeing mother, melons, mouth, mine. So you have the M that sort of is sort of creating a sonic integrity across those lines. Mother, that's line 5, 10, 15, 20. So that's lines 19 through 22. Right, line 22, remember, is the line of the questions, of the two question marks. Open orbit, nothing more. Started thinking about O's there. Of fruit, blade, garden. Yeah, you have some B's. You have several consonants there, but some more B's here. Blade, back, bait, braid, and some D's also kind of threaded through there too. Blade, braid, duty, right? So that's lines 25 through 27. I think that's, yeah, 30, 35. Actually, more than that, because you have also bewitched then. So that's line 28. My imminent, so you have some M's there, the my there, before eventual. Some R's, prescriptions, grown. Must become faithful wife. Okay. So then, yes, that last line then, some F's. Keeping that sort of held together sonically. So lots of fun alliteration, but again, not necessarily over the top. It still comes across, as I indicate in my notes for bean counting. The poem the poem feels free to let its sentences go and move conversationally without having to be restricted to the logic of lineation. And yet, right, there's also the sort of elegant alliteration and sound system that emerges out of that, um, that lean more into um, syntactic independence, and but then sometimes, the syntax and lineation line up, but the anyway, the sound system itself is uh, quite pleasing to track. and still sort of tapping into that incantatory um, power of lyric voice by way of the sound. All right, let's think about the prose sense here. This might be a little tricky because there's no stanzas to kind of organize these notes. So I think we have to instead maybe think about it as a letter we're moving through. You'll recall, if you don't remember, that Camonghne Felix describes this poem as a letter and locates it in her life in a moment of sending a letter to a boss to let them know about a spiritual and professional shift in her life. Okay, so title. We have, of course, the address, dearly departed, address, to one left behind, from departer to departed. Hmm. So it sort of marks a situation. But what else does it do? Also locates us in potential dream language and logic. Dream cutting two ways, perhaps, as the stuff of sleeps, poetics, and fantasy, and aspiration, and calling. Drawing some of that from the note that Felix wrote, which I don't always like doing. I like to try to just work with the poem, but the Felix provides that for us as a kind of paratext. So think we should maybe honor that and think about how some of that framing is actually articulated in the title itself. Okay, so let's how many sentences do we have? Can we do it by sentences? Is that ridiculous? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then if we count questions, 11, 12. So there are 12 sentences. Is it ridiculous to organize this by sentence? Maybe not, right? Yeah. And maybe not so ridiculous to think of calling, as after all, the second line of the poem describes the mouth. Interesting. A mouth aboard said ship called out to me, not a person. Okay, mouth aboard said ship. Remember, it's a dream, so one kind of wonders what's going on here. Okay, so sentence one locates us in a moment of calling, a moment of calling when the speaker is not her best self, sour, old, unglossed. Okay. So again, there's a lot of other ways in which that those first five lines are orienting us, but I think this is the gist of what we can work out. Where are we? Where are we sort of psychologically, emotionally? And also the speaker's kind of telling a story, trying to set the scene for her departure and the news of her departure. Setting the scene of the occasion of deciding to depart. We'll put a question mark there just to see. Okay, so what about sentence two then? Sentence two runs from this line to this one. Okay, sentence two describes the voice and its lesson, listening. and two new voices. Those are the crows, right? Lesson learned. Again, I don't know if lesson would be the way that Felix would want us to kind of think about what's happening in that sentence, but I mean, basically, we see a progression. Sentence one, there's a calling. We get a sense of where the speaker's at in her life, perhaps, when that calling comes. And then a kind of reorientation that happens here, right? One starts listening, or she, the speaker, starts to listen differently to what's around her. Okay. Um, Sentence three, backstory, so to speak, right? For years. Backstory might be too heavy-handed a way to say it, but we do kind of rewind, like what's happened before the calling and the lesson has been learned, the reorientation, the transformation has happened. For years, that strange whistle of new language nettled me sloppily, its orientation unmapped. Backstory. Well, it's not really a backstory, not really a backstory, but rather a description of the speaker's past relationship with the calling, what's now called a whistle of new language. I mean, it is of course hard not to think about poems being about being a poet, right? Many poems are about being a poet. I'm not so sure that's not quite the answer to what's being described here. Especially given the paratext we're given is not about deciding to become a poet. Felix had been writing poetry quite a bit before this poem was written, so it's not about I assume leaving work as a political strategist to devote oneself full time to being a poet. Though maybe that is understood for her as the sort of spiritual trajectory that's calling her. But even so, when I find in a poem references to the whistle of new language, something like that, it's hard not to think that what's being described is, um, something like the classical muse calling out, and one can maybe remember across one's life a faint sense of that call, but sometimes there's that strong moment of decision, right? Where, oh, that's what that is, right? And this is what I need to be and do. Anyway, sentence four, I let it holler too long untended, right? So this is where we get more of the more backstory, elaboration of the speaker and her. Do you think it's fair that I'm using the feminine pronoun? We'll keep going with it, but I'm happy to be corrected. Um, Elaboration of the speaker and her hmm, long inattention. Is that the right word? You call untending inattention to the whisper, the mouth, the voice, right? So that's sentence five that brings us here. This the sort of disturbing description of that voice asserting itself after that long period of ignorance. Hmm. And this is a befuddling sentence, isn't it? How many sentences do we have? 12? I'm liking this so far as a way to try to reckon with it, but maybe it'll take a little long. Hope you all don't mind. Sentence five. Is it consequence? Consequence of inattention? Right. Address to departed. commentary on the mode of explanation, right? It takes exactly this much effort to tell you that I have been stayed. New state. Stayed. Right. New state stayed by a new forgetfulness, stayed by an urgent condition. A mother warbler feeding me melons by the hole. Right. First question regarding hungry mouth. Second question, mouth open to reception, wide open. These are, of course, rhetorical questions as well, right? Um, so I think this is, you know, a long sentence here. Then to bait the braid of duty. What on earth does that mean? To bait the braid of duty. Huh. Reflection on entering the speaker's 30th year of life and a summary of desire, want. And is it why is it and want for nothing? Want for nothing more than. Why not want nothing more than? Why want for? Because to want for something is to kind of lack it, right? He didn't want for anything is usually a way of saying, like, is usually a way of saying, like, you have all you need, right? But I guess that in a way is what's being said. Have no need of anything except, right? The syrup of fruit, getting big time goblin market vibes here with this the reference to syrup. Although that's probably unfair. Every reference to fruit and syrup is gonna maybe call up that poem. If you don't know Goblin Market, it's quite a ride. Then the blade of guard. I mean, and then these. I mean, some pretty ambivalent imagery here, right? Then the blade of a garden in the small of my back. That's really interesting. Huh. Okay. Statement of departure. Departure. I regret to inform you, even drawing on the kind of language um, of resigning or quitting, or also um, the kind of language that employers use if they don't choose to hire you. Regret to inform you that blah blah blah. Okay. And then a statement of love for that which the speaker is departing. Statement of love for that which the speaker is departing. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm missing a preposition or something there, but I think you see what I'm saying. So we do see that there's a logic. There is a kind of logic, a letter logic here, right? From the very title, which addresses the addressee, so to speak, the you that's only referenced by that pronoun, I think, twice in the poem. We get something like a narrative, although it's a dream narrative. It's also a lyrical narrative, and so it doesn't have the texture of a story that we would expect from prose fiction. It instead kind of walks us through a set of images that describe the sort of moment of transformation, backing up to talk a little bit about a sort of past relationship to that very faint sense of calling that was ignored too long, the speaker says, uh, and then the resignation, and threaded through that is not just a simple celebration of this calling. There is ambivalence about it, right? What I love is a heaven that vexes me, right? Um, and want for nothing more than the syrup of fruit, than the blade of a garden in the small of my back, than to bait the braid of duty. Okay. Bewitched reason. Yeah. No, I think that's right. Okay, that's enough for now, for today. Next time we'll think a bit about the form of the poem. Maybe we'll think a bit more about what this idea of a poem as a letter affords, the sort of functioning at the formal level of the poem itself. Um, as a reminder, by form, I simply mean, sort of generally speaking, the arrangement, the shape of the poem, and the relationship of the parts to each other. I don't mean how it fits a particular way of writing poetry per se, although in some cases that might be what we talk about. And then for figures of speech, I've been thinking, although I'm like 56 videos in now, that I'm not entirely happy with how I handle or talk about figures of speech. Although with T.S. Eliot, one thing I did like when I was talking about Rhapsody on a Windy Night, I did like that I chose one simile and then spent some time with it. Really tried to uh, wrap my head around it a little bit. And maybe that's more useful than just inventorying all the different kinds of figurative language that are at play in the poem. So maybe if we inventory, we also take some time, or I take some time to choose one to sit with and think with in a sort of formal way. What's the relevance of that particular figure of speech for what the poem is up to? But that's next time. This time we're done for now, listening for the sound and sense of Camonghne Felix's Dearly Departed. Again, I dreamt about a ship. Thanks for spending more time with this poem and with me today. And yeah, like always, let's read more poems tomorrow.